Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. I hope everybody's having a beautiful day. I hope that you're aware that you have an inner navigating system. And when you learn how to take control of that inner navigating system, then you will be rewarded with a tenacity that will allow you to conquer the world in the way that a young woman from Pakistan living in an apartment that seems like it might be apocalyptic comes all the way to the United States, gets an engineering degree, and takes over the NASA Science Center and is here with us today. She's an author, a rocket scientist, an incredible individual, a mother, someone who is passionate about helping people see the best parts of themselves, the most authentic part of themselves. And she's going to share with us some secrets about why she wrote this book and who she is and some of the secrets that she has. So I hope everyone is excited. The links will be in the show notes. You definitely check out her book. But we're going to begin. I'm going to bring her on right here. Shehnaz, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I'm good, and I love your enthusiasm. And I think that this is going to be quite an interesting exchange and the conversions between us because excitement enhances the excitement. So we will have to see how we do this quantum dance with you and me, and how we really, basically open the door for people to see the potential that we each exude and we each express and we each contain to live a best life.
Indeed. Upon opening the door and the light coming in, what do you think is the best way to do that? Is the best way to begin to open that door is to share a story from the past with perhaps how you, I was just watching a short little bio where you talking about this place from where you came and you're like, the language you used was so beautiful. You're like, the spot, it looks like it's apocalyptic. However, just like the infrastructure in most countries, so too is the human on the inside amazing. Maybe you can start with a background story.
I think that's a great one. It's funny because I'll share this with you because so of course I'm from Karachi, Pakistan. I was born and raised there. And while I was in that container, I truly had no idea about the life outside, except that I was still watching Star Trek, even though I did not understand English. But I knew in Star Trek that everybody lives, especially people with the right color uniform. So that much I gathered even without knowing the language. But I was very intrigued about American culture and all of that. But the thing is, so then I come to America, right, through arranged marriage and all that good stuff. And then when I go back to Pakistan and I look at everything from an observer phenomena, right? So now I'm no longer in it. I'm looking at it from outside. And I was realizing that when I'm walking into my building, like, going to the third floor, and there's so many tobacco spit all over the place. It's so dirty and it's so filthy. There's so many flies in the atmosphere. And I'm thinking that how dirty it is, how hard it is to breathe. And I lived in that culture for 21 years of my life because that was my life. And then, of course, but when you come to the house, like where my mom and dad lives, you enter through that door. And then, in the door, it's very clean. It's very nice because my mom is very clean. So you're right. Us, we have all of these hidden doors and we all have these hidden gems. And, I always say that the way I got married, arranged marriage, right? So we gauge the person through how they live, how they treat their parents, how they treat their friends. And that to me is the formula we should use whenever you are bringing new people in your life, because actually that's a great formula. In my case, they did not do any of that because my first husband was living in America. He didn't have a dad and his mom wasn't living in Pakistan. So nobody could go into their house and check them. And that's why my story was kind of a little bit more challenging in a way, because I talked to him for 1 hour and I came to America. And then I realized he had no money to even afford my ticket, let alone my life. And then when I entered in the studio apartment, I realized that there was no space for my clothes. There was no bed. So I basically had a huge shock when I got married and came within a week and entered into a life where I was surrounded by people that I didn't know. I didn't speak the language or the culture. I couldn't connect with my family because I couldn't afford to make a phone call. It cost $1 a minute. The point of the story is all of that. And then, so when I go to Pakistan and I look at everything, I realize that there is that hidden gem in all of us. And sometimes you have to go through so many layers. And Pakistan is a great representation of a country that's very beautiful from inside, the people's heart, the people's hospitality, the natural resources. But it looks very messed up from outside because of what has happened to infrastructure and the type of leader who has been running the show.
Yep. Sometimes the sweetest fruit has the hardest casing. You know, you know what I mean by that? Like, it's protected because it's so wonderful on the inside, and like nature has this way of creating a shell around it.
I think that there's, and you know, to some extent, because you need to ripe yourself to that extent. And it could be that the only way you can break all that barrier is you have to be so ripe. You have to be so ripe that once you are ready to break the barrier, there's no stopping.
What do you think about the caterpillar and the butterfly metaphor? Is that a similar one? Like, once there's no turning back, right? Whether you're so ripe you're going to burst, or whether you're so ripe for transformation that it's going to happen.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. So to me, you know, we're kind of transforming in every stages of our lives, right? It's a continuous process. But when we use the word caterpillar and butterfly, it's just to signify the physical form that gets so different. But the fact that the form that it does end up adopting has more freedom.
Yeah.
Because it can fly, right? So it has more freedom. Not only that, it does look kind of a little bit more pretty to the eyes, right? Because it has all these beautiful colors. Not only that, it basically can transform further, except the transformation is a little bit different than caterpillar to butterfly, right? So there is that aspect of it. So I think that, to me, law of conservation of energy is at play in every aspect of our lives. And when we start adopting that, we're no longer going to be attached to things or to places or to people or to death.
That is, especially in the Western world, it seems our relationship to death is one of taboo. Like, we don't want to talk about it. Like, you know, when we think of palliative care, pa means to like cover up. So like in the whole world of the West, we're desperately trying to cover up the fact that we're dying. Like, that's kind of a big problem, right? When we don't even allow ourselves to be comfortable with the fact that we may be dying, or even explain what death is. Did you notice was that one of the things you noticed when moving over here, was the Western ways of dealing with death? Is that different from the culture where you were brought up?
You know, it's interesting because I have a very different perspective, but I see what you're saying. But I'm going to say, so of course, when I came to America, one of the biggest thing that I was really taken by was the fact that there was so much diversity here, right? Because in Karachi, I'm only seeing my kind of people, you know, men and women, they're all the same. Like, you know, we have certain flavor. But when you come to America, especially, I was landed in Los Angeles, right? So I'm looking at all this variety. I'd never seen all these different type of people. So to me, that was interesting. The other thing I really liked about American culture was the fact that everybody was very outspoken. Like, people did not, and most, like, to me, that was very amazing, because back home, it's all about like living like a Lady Diana, where you are being told what to do. I was always covered up, right? So my face was the only thing was shown. And even then I would get all these letters from the guys, and I would get so scared that if anybody sees them giving me letter, that I may just die in the process, because, you know, honor killing was still going on.
Whoa.
So the point of the story is, I'm looking at it from a very different perspective. But the whole death thing is another thing. I have not gone to a lot of funerals, but I was very amazed that in the funeral, everybody looks pretty. They're wearing all these sexy dresses, like black color. Back home, when somebody dies, I mean, you're like supposed to cry. And I was having such a hard time with that, because whenever I would go, and there was lots of funeral in Pakistan because people die a lot. And whenever I would go to any kind of funeral, my mom would give me all the instructions that you're not supposed to laugh or smile or do anything. And I have such a hard time with containing myself, because the more I was told not to do any of that, the more I would do it. And I would get in trouble, because everybody can see that I'm not behaving myself. I'm not following the trend. And it was very hard for me to follow anyone's instruction on being a good girl, you know, like that. So, yeah, but I see also your point on what you're saying about the whole death thing, where people are dying and then you're in a hospital and people are all trying to save you. And even though in the process of saving, they're messing up your body. And it's like not accepting the fact that it's a natural course of being human.
Yeah, it's interesting to me to think about that. You know, I notice a pattern. It seems to me that throughout your life, you have been put in positions where you had to figure out the best way possible at the closest minute Has that been like something that's not only been a pattern in your life, but maybe you could speak to how that shaped you, how to think so quickly and maneuver nimbly and understand the world around you?
Yeah, I feel like I should probably help the escape room people create some really good strategy there, because truly you're absolutely right. Okay, so first time when I was in a consciousness, right, and looking at my human body and recognizing that I'm like trapped, this genie is trapped in this body, and I'm like really young girl, and I'm looking at everybody, and I was always very petite and very thin, and I'm arguing with my aunts and talking to my mom and trying to understand that why we are here, what is the reason, what we are supposed to do. And then my mom would pretty much say that read the Quran. I mean, and but the Quran you're only supposed to read in Arabic, which means you can't understand the damn thing. So you are kind of like really, like, everywhere you go the answer has its own limitations, right? And I started learning that really fast, that none of the adults truly knew the answer. They didn't even have time to ask the questions. And then they started telling me that, why are you wasting your time asking the question? You are only going to be spending your life in the kitchen making food, so just become a really good cook, learn how to sew clothes, learn how to bake cakes, just be all the thing. And I actually learned all of that because that was part of my training. But that was like, okay, I can do all that all day long, but I need to do more than that. So I think that when I realized that none of my people were able to answer the questions, then what I did was that I became very studious. So whatever I would study in the school, I would spend all my time and energy on that. And that's why I became a valedictorian, because that became my escape from all the bullshit that was around me, because it felt very limiting and there was no way I could liberate myself. At one point, I don't remember exactly the age, but I think it was kind of like 11 or something, where I was on my third floor on the stool thinking of jumping, because I really didn't think that I can fit in, because I always felt very out of place in every aspect of my life. I was born in a very orthodox culture where we had to cry a lot every time when we would go to the mosque, and we had to beat our chest. And I was always given instruction that if I don't cry, then it's a problem. So, my mom even, like, I was even given a suggestion that look at something for a long time so that your eyes can get filled with tears, so you can actually do a good job in showing people that how sad you are. Can you believe that? And so I struggled with all of that, and I was in this mess. I knew that nobody understands me. I couldn't ask even people when they come from America. I would really like, because I would think that they came from another planet, and now I can ask them questions. And I would ask them that, how is it? And, what is, can you please tell me about the black hole? Do you know what's behind the sky? And they're looking at me thinking that, oh God, they're like, just because I went to America doesn't mean I know all the answers, because they didn't have the curiosity that I had, right? So basically, because of all that struggle, I was even thinking that I should just die. But then I thought about my mom, and I said, you know what, my mom will cry. And I actually felt like I don't want to put that type of burden on someone. So I said, okay, that's just not going to work. So I stopped. But it's kind of like, okay, you think about all these strategy, and the only one that I really followed was becoming studious, putting all my eggs in the basket of understanding whatever knowledge came to me. I truly deep dive into it. And then when the proposal started coming, and that means that, it's an arranged marriage system in my culture, right? So the only way I would have exit my reality was through the arranged marriage. There was no other way for me, because if I fall in love, then I'll be killed. So my whole story was that, okay, this is the only option available. So the very first proposal came, the guy was like 15 years older than me. So I didn't want to go for that. The second one was 7 years older, and he seemed like he was smiling a lot. So I felt like there's a hope there. So then, and it's only 1 hour you have to decide about your fate.
Wow, that's so crazy.
Exactly. So this is just my first story of how I escaped from that. But I went from one mess to another. As you know, that when I got married to him, and then I realized that he doesn't have money, he was in love with someone else. And on top of that, I couldn't, like, he brought me to America, so there was no way for me to fly anywhere. So I was from one cage to another. And in this cage, I had to learn to speak English, to learn how to dress right, find a job so I can make money, so I can be independent. And I had to do all of that while I was married to this man who was a stranger to me.
I almost need a minute just to take that all in. That is freaking, it is, it's as inspiring and impressive as it is sad. if that makes sense. Like, it's so crazy, but the craziest part is that you conquered all of it. I think that explains the tenacity with which we've spoken about earlier. What it seems to me that I'll just ask the question, at what point in time, like, there has to be a spiritual connection, like, 'cause you have to be asking, why me, or what's the bigger plan? There had to be times when you're asking yourself that question of like, really, this is it? You're giving me this right now? You're giving me this?
Yeah,
Like,
and you know what? That's interesting because I remember most of the time in my childhood, like I would be, like we would be all in a car because my dad finally, when he got the car, we would go out and stuff. But my dad was a kind of an angry man, so it was never that fun to be with him. And the whole time while I'm in a car, I'm always like, it was always like my entire life in Pakistan was more like that. I'm there, but I'm looking out the window and wondering what's out there, right? The whole time. And then I'm very sad from inside. And you won't even believe it. The Beetlejuice movie. Have you seen it?
of course.
Okay, so
Yes.
when I turned 16, I have my book, by the way. It's all in Urdu because, that was my national language. I have all this poetry that I have done in Urdu, and they're all extremely dark. It's all about dying, and it's all about ugliness of life, because that's just the way I felt. Like, I felt how messed up this world is, because my world was dying to be expressed, and it was so held tight under the curtain, right? Like, I had to be covered up. I had to be a certain way. I had to follow exactly the type of life that my culture had created for me to live for the rest of my life, not just for the time while I'm with my parents, but because I got arranged marriage, so I can be with this man for the rest of my life. And I was completely very devout Muslim, and I understood the difference between hell and heaven. And from my perspective, if I ever leave my husband, I'm going straight to hell. And the way I was kind of brainwashed or indoctrinated, I truly did not want to go to hell. So my goal was to be the best Muslim girl on planet Earth for the rest of my life. That's how I came to America, by the way, because I had no plan on giving up on him So if you think about it, it's a pretty huge enslavement that was created around me. And of course, I had bought into it. So I had accepted it. And that's pretty much where the story starts, right? That I'm actually pretty much like I use the analogy that you are in a coffin and you're buried alive, and like I feel like I'm a what is that, sleeping beauty, right? So you are basically in the coffin, right? And I'm buried alive. The only difference is that when I wake up, there's nobody kissing me and helping me escape, because that's not the way it is. It's actually pretty messed up. The only thing that I say is that maybe I have a lighter and I can burn the coffin, because the coffin is made of ice. So, I mean, you see my point, like you can change the variable because it's your imagination. I mean, it's like, why not, right?
Right.
So it's my imagination. So I open the door. But when you open the door, it's a pretty rough world out there, because you were not trained to live in that world, because you were trained to be submissive. You were trained to be obedient. You were trained to follow what was created for you from beginning to end. And there was a lot of fear. I had so many fears that it was a very long list of fears that I had to overcome to get where I am today.
It's fascinating to me to think about being able to break the condition to see the world anew. And it sounds like, is that something? Okay, so if we talk about the quantum being, it sounds to me like this is the beginning of the quantum being right here. Like this is this first stage of quantum coming into being. Like you've broken the mold, and now you are beginning to have this relationship with uncertainty, but uncertainty on a profound level in a different country with a new language, with a new culture, everything around you. What is that like now? Like, so you're with this gentleman and you're creating this new life. What is your relationship to uncertainty at this point in time?
Right. So it's pretty interesting, the uncertainty. I'll give you an example that pops in. It's really hilarious, by the way. So I started attending because I knew I had to learn English, right? So I started attending the community college for speaking English. So I was attending this English class, and then I have this person next to me. And in the class, the teacher is asking that everybody should introduce themselves and who they are and what they are. And then there's this girl sitting right next to me. And then she introduces herself by saying that I'm lesbian, right? And I'm just barely learning English. And I'm thinking that, what is that word, right? I have no idea what that word is.
Right.
And then, of course, I come home and I looked up in the dictionary and I learn about the word and understand it. And then finally, when once a month I was able to talk to my mom, my mom was like, how is life going? And I said, Mom, I was sitting next to the lesbian. And my mom was like, this is the end of the world, right? Because, I mean, because according to Quran, when the lesbian and gay are pretty much obvious to the world. I mean, that's the judgment day according to Quran. So my mom is thinking that this is a pretty tragic situation, right? I mean, that my daughter goes all the way to America and then this is what she's experiencing. So it was interesting to experience all of that, and to me still say that no, there's no judgment there, because it's just a different. So I actually, that was the one thing, and that is probably the reason I have made this journey this far, is because I never ever accepted other people's opinion about things, places, concepts as my own. Even though I respected it, I took their inputs, I considered it, but I
Right. Well
always had
said.
my own filter, and my filter truly has no bound. Like, it's so limitless, which is the main reason I created the Limitless life for me, because I always looked at people for how they are showing up for me, and all the other thing withered away.
When you say you look at how people show up for you, is your strategy when you meet people to show up for them the way they show up for you?
Well, to some extent, like, okay, so I don't know if you've watched my video on hologram, but we are a hologram, okay? So the thing is that because we're a hologram and we have infinite channels to dial in, when people come in our life, because they're mirroring us, right? So this aspect of, you are an aspect of me and I'm an aspect of you. And what happens is I'm putting myself now laser focus in your consciousness, and you're doing the same with me. So when we do that quantum dance, what happens is that we're going to exchange and converge and create and open the door for new holographic reality just by virtue of being in each other's presence. And then what we say or not say is all part of that quantum dance. So to me, like, I can feel people very fast. Like if I'm in a meeting and I'm supposed to go for joining you, let's say for an interview, within 5 minutes, I'm going to know if I want to even be with you. And if I don't, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm actually going to be very tactful and come out of the conversation and wish you all the best, because truly that's just the way it works for me. Because I'm like, let's just be honest. So people actually cannot hide who they are, especially. I don't know. Maybe I have this power that I bring the people to their authentic level because I'm showing up authentic for them, and it's hard for you to hide yourself. And if you are not going to be very somebody who wants to be authentic, then you're going to have a problem even staying in my frequency and vibration.
Do you think that I have this idea sometimes that we're moving through like these different sense ratios, and when you sit with people, and I think some people can feel this, like, when someone's hiding something, you may not know exactly what it is, but if you sit with them long enough, you'll get a view of it. Like, we're obviously taking in way more information than just words or facial expressions. Like, well, what's going on there? When you talk about quantum and holographic,
Yeah.
What's going on there?
So basically, there's a lot going on because, like, physically is just the tip of the iceberg, right? Which is what we're seeing each other. The rest of the stuff, which is the feeling, right? And feeling, of course, you can hide it. Like, let's say if you have, like right now, let's say if you're hungry, or let's say if I'm thirsty, you can hide it. So because that's more personal. But there are so many other feelings that are perpetuated in the morphogenetic field. So like you and I are meeting remotely, right? Through this screen and the laptop and a whole bunch of shit. But if you would be meeting in person, that's even more magnification, right there. Because in person, when you meet, and that's why I want to create that, by the way. So next year, 2024, and maybe you can help me with that, because I want to create a place where we can all show up and have the most incredible gathering. And then I can share the quantum being wisdom, and we can just soak into each other's energy. Because when you do that, and if you want to create a community, that's the best way to open the door, because you're going to know if you're going to work with these people or not, because your auric field goes really far depending on how much work you've done and what channel you're dialing in at a time. The morphogenetic field is already there, the quantum field is already there, all the other different fields, the electrostatic field, the electromagnetic field, the gravitational field, all of them encompassing and creating a dance for you to actually experience another crystalline human in your life. So it's a very, very powerful thing. And there's infinite amount of message being passed between you and me. And the thing is that is what decides that how we're going to actually meet up next time, or we're going to meet up next time. Because when you meet a new person, you are already changing your timeline and theirs, and then it opens a new portal.
It's fascinating to think that just a mere interaction with someone can fundamentally transform their lives. And when you start talking about changing the timelines of people, can you give me an example of when that happened to you? Like a cool one, like an important one. Important to you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, okay, so I'll give a simple example on how I met
Okay.
Perry, and I think I mentioned that there. But it's interesting that, like, there are certain people when you're supposed to meet them, and you think that you're going to meet them, you schedule a time, and then if the time changes, it's partly because you are not supposed to meet. You're supposed to meet them exactly when you're going to meet them, right? But the
Right.
interesting thing with Perry was that when we were supposed to meet, he had to reschedule because he had something come up, and then when that happened, between the delay that was introduced, in between that, I ended up running into this woman who had created an art which was all about octopus, and I met her. So I met this woman who is an artist in Huntsville, and she basically shows me this art that is all about octopus. And she says this is in Sarasota, Florida. And when I met her, 2 days after, I was actually flying to Sarasota, Florida, right? So I told her that this is so interesting. And then, of course, I went and stopped there when I was in Florida just to kind of make a point and send her a picture too. But then after that, I noticed that even my son's car, basically the number that my son's car has is exactly the number, the 398. And then when I came and started talking to Perry, and then he starts talking about, what is octopus? And then he says that, 398. And so the point of the story was that I had to collect all of that gold dust in the process of getting to meet him. Like, I already met an artist, octopus came in my life through her. And then the very fact that my son car pretty much is, the number is octopus. And all of that converged. So when I met him, it was almost like it was all part of my my auric field. And I think that because when we met, we already had to take it to the next level, and that was already being pre-planned. But when you meet a person and when you feel a strong connection, then you change your timeline, mainly because you do make a change in your life. Like in my case, when I met Perry, I realized that I have to join the octopus movement, right? So that as soon as I did that, if I wouldn't have done that, you and I would not have met today. So you see how all of those steps had to happen for you and I to create this gathering.
It's like ashes to gold.
Exactly. And that is the exact. So the thing is that what I want to teach people is be aware of what binary input you're putting in your storyline and what experience are you generating as an output, because that's pretty much the dance we're doing: input, output, and processing it. And we are the processor, right? So we have a pretty big responsibility to make sure that we represent ourselves with our full potential and full light.
What happens if we don't do that? Like, is that where someone gets stuck in like this low frequency, and maybe they start seeing themselves in a negative way, and then they start attracting that into their life? Or
yeah, because for the most part, that is why I always say, right, that whatever you do, gauge your feelings. Because I actually always wonder that people who are like big celebrity or big shot or look beautiful on the screen, how are they really feeling? Like, I want to ask them that question. And if they're feeling shitty and they're pretending to be happy, then whom are they lying? They're lying to themselves.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what I'm saying, is that at the end of the day, we all have to at least take responsibility for ourselves, because the reason we have so much chaos in the world is partly because we are not processing ourselves the most graceful way. We're not doing what we needed to do. And what happens when you put your skeleton in the closet is going to come out somewhere else. It's going to show up somewhere else. It's going to create a mess one way or the other. And that's why I want everybody to clean their own mess, and then they can help clean everybody else's mess.
Yeah, it seems that a lot of people in positions of authority, and I think we confuse authority with power a lot, but it seems like a lot of the times people that have a lot of power have a big mess that they haven't cleaned up, but they want to help everyone clean up their mess. Like, wait a minute, what's this over here, guys? Maybe you should fix that before you start telling me what to do.
Exactly. And the thing is that if you really think of the fractal existence, everything kind of builds on top of each other, right? So it's like, so when you do one thing, it affects everything, and it keeps creating that cascading effect, right? Just like you put a pebble in the water, right, and creates the ripple effect. Right. That's how every aspect of our action affects. So when you start really understanding that how you're affecting yourself and others and creating a ripple effect and 100 monkey effect, with then you become more conscious about what you're doing, at least. And then that's how we can bring the heaven on earth, because we all have to become very aware of the step we're taking, why are we taking it, and what vision do we have in mind. Because I have ran into so many people that when I ask them that if you have like a one day to live, what would you do, they're like, oh, I don't know, I don't have no idea, one day to live. And I'm like, it's so sad, right, that we truly don't look at life that we have one day to live, because that comes from Islamic teaching. So we were taught that every time when you sleep, you pretty much die because you're half dead, and then when you wake up, you should say thank you.
Right. Every day you get a chance to die, and every morning you get a chance to be reborn. And I wish people, I think it comes down to conditioning. So for so long, so many people have been conditioned to maybe not be the best versions of themselves. Like sometimes creativity, I think, is conditioned out of people. It's like, why don't you grow up and be this obedient person that can get a job for 30 years, and then maybe one day when you're 70, you can start living. Like it's
and that's very true.
Opposite. Yeah,
that's very true. And if you think about it, like in my case, I was conditioned. Creativity is completely conditioned out.
Yes.
And then I come here, and the thing is that because when I came here and I realized that I'm really completely codependent because I have no money, I don't speak the language, I'm like really screwed. I got to get my shit together, right? So I'm working hard to get myself in it. And then I get myself an admission in one of the school, which was the hardest thing to do, by the way. And it had to do with the fact, so basically, I knew that I had to continue my education so that I can be more useful to society, because I was doing minimum wage jobs, and minimum wage jobs does not help you to become independent. Right. And on top of that, I didn't mention it, but not only that my first husband didn't have any money to afford me, he actually had a huge debt to pay. So for me, my biggest goal was to make money and pay off the debt so we can live interest-free life, So I had all these goals in my head. So when I go for admission to UC Irvine, right? And when I go to the admission, apparently there was a huge story there where my mark sheet had one of the class, Logic Design System Technology, which showed up fail. And there's a reason for that too. So of course they were not giving me admission because they thought that I am not going to be able to handle the coursework there. So I was denied admission from all three places I applied in LA. And just imagine that is just one story that shows the spirit that I have, because I have had many challenges in my life, but I'm just sharing that to kind of give you a perspective that how I solved my problem, because that's pretty much multiplies in all the things I've done in my life. And that's the reason you are talking to me about my accomplishments. So let's go with the story, right? So basically I get denied, right? Now I'm thinking, what am I going to do, right? Because I'm denied, which means I can't become an engineer. So out of the three schools that I got denied with, there was only one school that I would have loved to go to. It was one of the best schools. So of course, I said, okay, which school would I, if because I always ask myself this question, if sky has no limit, what would I want to happen? I said, I would love to get admission in this school, right? So now I'm thinking, how am I going to get admission? They already denied it, right? So then I said, okay, who is the most powerful person in the school who has a power to give me the admission back again? And, it was the chancellor. Her name was Laurel Viking or something like that. Anyway, so I looked up her name, and just imagine that I'm not speaking good English also, right? Because this is the beginning part of my life. So, and I'm still trying to do something that's impossible from every aspect, and nobody's helping me. It's just me, myself, and I. So then I said that, so then I created a meeting with her, and then I go and meet her, right? And of course, just by the way I looked like, I was like a really petite girl. I was a 90-pound girl when I came to America. And, I spoke broken English. I was wearing clothes that were like half, like it was obvious that I'm not from here. And then I told her that, I said that I need this admission because it's important for me to be able to survive in America. And then she said that, why would I give you an admission when you have a fail on your mark sheet? And I said, that's why I'm here, is to explain you why I got the fail on the mark sheet. And then she said, okay, I'm all ears. So then I told her that basically what happened was, so we have an annual system back home, okay? So it's not like that you get all these intermediate quizzes and all this good stuff where you get to have many opportunities to pass something, right? So it's a one-stop shop. You go to school for 1 year, and then towards the end of the year, you have exams for 1 month for all of your courses. And then whether you pass or fail, that's your destiny. Logic Design System Technology class was one of the class where I actually, first of all, I got married in the middle of all this, right? So I'm in my 1-year admission in Karachi, and in the middle of it, I get arranged marriage and I come back to America. Now, the only good thing was that my husband knew that me becoming an engineer is very important for his livelihood. So he wanted me to go back to take the exam because it would help me not have to go to school, because school is very expensive, right? So this would give me some of my 1 year work as a credit. And then that way I can take less classes and become an engineer. You see the strategy there?
Yeah. Totally.
So because of that, I go back to take an exam. And when I go back there, the logic design system class, when the exam time comes, what happens is that one of the rich boy was sick that day, and he belonged to a union. So they knew that because he's sick, he's going to get the fail in his mark sheet. So what they did was used all their power to completely boycott the exams so nobody could take it. So while I'm just flying from America to take these exams and I'm determined to take the exams, I go to the school and everybody's at gunpoint taking their exams away. I'm still not giving up. And I'm sitting in a room alone with this paper and I'm working on it. Just think about the spirit that I have, right? And of course, a boy comes with a big giant Kalashnikov and he says, that why are you still here? You're not supposed to take the exam. The exam is boycotted. And I said, well, I said that I flew from America all the way to here to take the exams. I'm not going to be able to come back again when the exam gets issued. And I have to take this exam. And I started explaining that. And then he put the gun on my temple. And pretty much at that point, I knew that I have to let this go. So then I actually cried. I mean, the tears started coming out of my eyes and it was all on the paper. And the irony is you use the ink, which is one of those ink that can get spread out. So my already I'm seeing the, like something that was so important to me is being messed up right in front of my eyes. And I have no power, right? I have no power. And you just have no idea how powerless I felt, right? But think about the spirit that I have. I still did not give up. So basically, after he did that, he took my paper, he tore it apart to make sure there's no way I can take this paper. And then I pretty much picked up my bag. And rather than walking out to get a bus to come home, I go to the principal office this is NIT University in Karachi I'm talking about. And I go there and there's a man sitting there looking all happy. And I go there and I walk in there and I say that, sir, I need your help. I flew all the way from America to here to take this exam. Today is the exam scheduled date. And all the Rangers are not letting me take, I mean, it was not Rangers, it was more like a union people. Mm-hmm. They're not letting me take the exam. And I'm looking to see if there's any place in this university where I'm safe enough to take the exam. And this guy is looking at me thinking that I have like two horns or something, or maybe I came from a whole different planet, because the tenacity and the fact that I'm talking to him, I'm a woman, mm-hmm. even though I was still covered up, but still I'm a woman, and I'm talking to him and he's looking at me and thinking, holy shit. He said, which union do you belong to? Like, who represents you? And I said, I don't belong to any union. I belong to me. And he said, well, that doesn't work here. You have to be belonging to some union for me to even listen to you.
Was the Chancellor's face with whom you were speaking like mine, like just like in shock when you're telling her this story? Like,
yeah, exactly. And she basically said that I can't believe that this is happening on planet Earth right now. And I said, yeah, because, if you really think about it, all these different countries have different timeline running. They all have different cultures. They all have different type of dictatorship. And I do come from a country where it's very, very different than here. And it was interesting. She was completely taken by the whole story. And even then, she gave me an admission on contingency, because she said you have to keep your GPA higher than 3.0. And I'm going to be watching you for 2 semesters to see if you can survive here. Right. And I took all her condition. I said, I accept all of your conditions, and you'll know that I'll do really good. And I was graduated magna cum laude from there.
Congratulations. It's awesome. That is a wonderful story. I think everybody should hear that story.
Yeah. And that's how I got my engineering. And you see, the engineering degree was the door for the freedom for me. And if I wouldn't have done what I did, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be at NASA. I wouldn't be a rocket scientist. So what I'm saying is that every step matters. And but the thing is, your fire is what creates that opportunity for you. And an obstacle comes your way. Like for me, I have got plenty of obstacle. And I think because of that, I've become so strong. And that's why I want to teach people that there is no obstacle as big as you think it is, because you are the only one making the obstacle bigger than it is.
The obstacle is the way.
Yeah. And through the obstacle is the way, because when you actually overcome the obstacle, and just like you guys were talking, right? You and Evan were talking that there's a devil at every level.
Yeah.
Yes. And that to me is how we are evolved. That's to me is how we, because, when I actually convinced her, now I had to prove her, right? So it wasn't that easy by any means. Now I'm like thinking I'm learning English, right? Already, which is hard. Then I'm learning engineering at the very prestigious school, which is hard. On top of that, it's taught by Chinese professor who has accent of their own. You can ask for more excitement than that in my life.
This brings up a very fascinating point about language. Through all of these stories so far, it seems that you are beginning to speak, or better, it seems to me that life is not only speaking to you, but you're beginning to understand the language of the planet. Like, it's speaking to you, and you're beginning this dance with the planet. Like, hey, the obstacle is the way. Hey, this part that I thought was freaking impossible was actually the corridor with which I had to walk through this dark night of the soul over here. Can you help people understand the way in which the world speaks to us?
That is true. Because you know what? Basically, the language is very simple. You have to listen to your heartbeat. You have to listen to yourself. You have to truly honor the inner dialogue that you have, good, bad, ugly, because the entire universe is contained within you, and you are representing your universe through projection of experiences, right? Because your experiences is a projection of your consciousness. And that's what I always say. And when you start understanding that, then you know that you are the source of all of it. And with that type of self-responsibility, you can actually do a way better job in creating a better reality for you. Because until then, you're going to keep on looking for excuses outside of you.
In a recent conversation I think you had with Anja, you were speaking about the plant, and I want to speak to this. Can I share a quick story with you about something that I learned by sitting outside? So I was sitting outside a while back, and I noticed that there is this vine, and it's climbing up this tree, and I'm watching it, and I was in a total different state of consciousness. I was just watching and just mesmerized. It was a beautiful day outside, and the sun was shining, and I was thinking to myself, how does that vine know to climb up this tree? And at 4.5 feet, it decides to begin to unfurl this magnanimous, beautiful flower with all these colors. And it knows to drop it at a 43-degree angle at 2:27 p.m. Like, how does it know that? Like, and it opens up perfect to the sun. And then I was like, how did I know how to walk away from this job at 100,000? How did I know to meet this person over here? How did I know to tell my daughter this thing? And the fractal nature of it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'm like, nature is explaining to you the way your life unfolds. And you can see your life unfold in a flower. You can see the ecosystem of the aphids eating the leaf the same way these little things are eating you up, in your life, and you're letting them eat you up, and you got to get out of there. Like, but you can see the world unfold around you in nature. Like, sometimes a battered coastline is a wonderful teacher, or a waterfall, if you just sit and listen to it, can talk to you in ways that other people can't. Like, maybe you could maybe help flesh out that idea of nature is all around us, speaking to us and trying to give us the answer if we're willing to listen.
Exactly. And I'll sum up your story with this statement here. Consciousness chooses moment to moment what it deems necessary.
Can you say that again?
Consciousness chooses moments to moments what it deems necessary. So that's how you create the sacred geometry of the flower of life, if you think about it, right? So that's the thing, right? So there is that occurring, but it requires you to truly be very authentic, truly honor yourself, truly follow that, and really know what is distraction and what is not, right? And that is the thing. And when you actually do that, the thing is the whole world works with you. Because I'll tell you one story, okay? So here is the story where I'm in LA, I'm new, I'm learning to drive, okay, because I'm learning to drive, I'm learning to speak English. The first 3 months was the hardest for me. I mean, the whole year I cried every night, but the first 3 months were hardest because I had to learn to drive, and it was very hard to drive in LA because it's so traffic and it's so overwhelming. And majority of the women never drive in Karachi, so it was not in my DNA. So it was a new thing I'm learning. But there was one point. What happened was, so I'm learning to drive new, and I got my license. And I actually end up going, and there was no cell phone at the time, and I didn't have the map either. And I end up getting lost in Balboa Beach in Orange County. Okay. Now the thing is, so I have no phone. I'm really scared. I'm a really young girl. I don't speak the good English. I have no idea how I'm going to get back home. I was 2 hours away from home, and I actually am in my car, and I'm just crying because I'm feeling like this is the end of me, because I have no idea what I'm going to do. And so I cry because I always cry. Like for me, that's, I had to release my challenges, right? So crying, it just helps. And then I asked God that why you did all that to me. So I talked to him as well, which is good because it helps me to just get it all out, right? I mean, nobody's listening, but somebody is. And then what happens is, then I think that what should I do to become more visible? But then I'm scared because I'm thinking if I get more visible, somebody will come and kidnap me, or somebody will do some mean things to me, because I come from Karachi, where a girl alone is asking for disaster. So, but then I had to get the courage, and I get out of the car and I look around, and then I see this boy, like a small boy, and kind of from a distance. And I can see he's looking at me with amusement, thinking that she looks like she's in trouble. So then I feel good because it's a young boy, right? So I'm like, he can't harm me much. So I go to him, and he's a Spanish boy, but he knew how to speak English. So I said that I'm lost and I just need a phone. Because I was thinking that if I can call my husband, then that he will come and save me, right? Because I was still in that mindset that he's that type of husband, but he's not. And you're going to learn that when you hear my story. Anyway, so then what happens? So I said that, can I get a phone? And then he's like, yeah, come with me, right? So then I walk with him, and I go to this really kind of weird place. And I basically go to his apartment where he lives, and his mom and dad, and they're all looking at me like, who is this girl? And none of them spoke English except the boy. And so the boy tells them, right, that she wants to make a phone call. And then they look at me, and they can see that, okay, she looks like safe. So they give me their phone, the landline phone. And of course, I knew my husband's number. So I call him, and he says that, figure it out.
What?
Because in his mind, if you can't figure it out, then it's on you. So, I mean, in a way, he was training me, but it really broke my heart when he said, figure it out, because now I knew that I have no way to get any help. So then I turned the phone off, and then I'm thinking, what can I do? What can I do? So then I look at the boy, and I said, do you have a map? Do you have anything that can help me? Because I knew my home address, and I was trying to figure out where I am. And then basically I had to do all of that. And then I had to figure out what freeway can I take, or how can I go? And then I used the boy to figure out how can I get back on the road. And he became my translator. And ultimately I was able to make home, and it took me a while to get home. And it was a very hard journey for me, and it taught me a lot of lessons. But I guess what I'm saying is that in all of these stories, right, if you really think about it, when I wanted to pretty much finish this life, I did not finish it. Then I did so many different things. It's almost like, when you are like, it's like a surrender, right? I mean, I had to surrender.
Yeah.
So when I was in the car and crying and wondering and talking to God, it was all surrender. It was part of surrender and acceptance that, yes, I feel like I'm in a shithole. I feel like it's a bad situation, right? I mean, like, accept it. And that's all part of my teaching. So I'm sharing you some nuggets here, is that it's good to accept if you are buried alive in a glass coffin, or whatever the coffin is, accept it. First accept it, that, okay, this is it. And as long as you're breathing, you're going to be fighting.
What do you think is the relationship between surrender and sacrifice?
Oh, I personally think there's no relationship at all in that sense. Because, okay, because of the word. I mean, look at the word. I don't know who came up with it. Okay, so sacrifice to me is kind of like, surrender is a positive word from my perspective, and sacrifice is actually not. So I guess I can see the point. Okay, so when Hazrat Ibrahim, okay, we're going to go into Bible story now.
Yeah,
So,
please.
right? when Hazrat Ibrahim was asked to kind of, sacrifice one of his precious son, for the sake of God and all that. And of course, you use the word sacrifice because truly he's sacrificing another human life. And when you really look at it from every standpoint, there's no human who have any kind of autonomy or power on any other human, even if you're a father to that person. So to me, that story kind of a little bit messes me up, because even if there is a God, the God should not ask for that. But secondly, you don't do that to your own child, because your child is not your property. Your child is another human being, and you don't get to decide whether they live or die for whatever the reasons are. So it gets into pretty messy stuff. But the point was, that's the word sacrifice that we use. And to me, surrender means that you accept your weakness and your strength and your current circumstances for what they seem to be. What would be the usage of sacrifice? Can you use that in a sentence other than Hazrat Ibrahim?
Like, sometimes you have to sacrifice what is you think is right. And I don't want to say that. Sometimes we must sacrifice who we are for who we want to be.
Yeah, I don't call it a sacrifice at all. I call it a law of conservation of energy. You're going from one form to another. It's
Okay.
part of the storyline. It's like when you die, then you die, which means you're no longer going to live in this body. So that to me is not a sacrifice. It's more like a transformation, right? So it's kind of interesting. I think we'll have to think about it, because now you just got me thinking that what is the right word for sacrifice? And maybe it's kind of a cop-out, or maybe it's somebody came up with that word because they think that they're sacrificing. Because, at the end of the day, when people say, I love you, for example, right? I'll give you this.
Okay.
Truly, you're saying it because you love them. But if you're saying them because you want them to say, I love you too, then that's not a good reason to say, I love you, right? You see my point? So,
yeah, I do.
Because we're all one. See, so we're all one. So this whole mentality of, I'm having a hard time with the word sacrifice right now in English. They need to cross that out. If you come up with a good reason for the word sacrifice, please let me know in this talk. Because right now I'm wondering that, because it's almost like, like people have entitlement, right? People who think that, I deserve it, I should have it. That is how sacrifice is coming to me right now. And I'm not liking it, because everything is exactly where it needs to be based on the flow of electron and photon, because we are choreographing all of this in our lives. And when we start understanding the cause and effect, the causality, and how everything comes into existence from energy into matter, then we will no longer be using all these scapegoat words.
Yeah. It's like folk psychology, kind of. Like, we don't thoroughly understand what these words mean. It's like, it's magic. Might as well just call it magic, because we don't understand. I love this person. What does that mean? Like, we can have all these words that try to explain it, but we don't thoroughly understand what it means. It's beautiful and it's wonderful, and it's this feeling of awe. And I mean, it's awful in the true sense of the word, this thing called love. And we can write poetry about it. But what does it mean? We don't know what it means. And I think we bump up against this ineffability sometimes, especially in altered states of consciousness, where you have this idea, but you can't bring it back for the tribe. And you struggle, and you try to find a linguistic pathway so you can drag this thing back. But it's difficult. And here's an interesting thing that I want to get your opinion on. It's this idea of the change. Like, it seems to me that if we look at the English language right now, like, you see nouns becoming verbs, and we're starting to see nouns become verbs. Like, do you think the world is shifting where we're seeing ourselves as a process versus a noun? And I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but if I think of Shehnaz as not a person, place, or a thing, but a process, I think that's such a more magnificent way to see people and things as a process instead of a noun. I see that transition happening. Do you see that?
That is exactly why I named my book The Quantum Being. So you hit it on the nail, because the being pretty much, because it's interesting, because the name was Quantum Human first.
Okay.
And then somebody else took the name, so I had to change it. But then I was so happy I changed it, because the quantum being has that resonance about it, like you're talking about the process.
Yeah.
The quantum human kind of parks you. It's almost like, it's like living in a house or renting a house, right? So when you live in a house, now you're like parked for the rest of your life. No. But that's why my son, for example, he never wants to live in a house. So he keeps renting different places because he thinks that I don't want to be parked in one place in space and time, because then that is too limiting. And so I completely agree with you, because we're all kind of a moving, and I actually say we're a moving electrons and photons, because that's what we are. And of course, just like Earth is moving, everything is moving. If you really look at it, every single thing is moving. And because of this quantum dance that we do, and because of the way we process information, just like the pixelated television, right? How we see everything as one cohesive film, right? But it's lots of pixels oriented in a certain way to broadcast the information to you, and then your eyes, the way it works and the way your brain works, is the only reason television became a source of entertainment.
What was one of when you changed the name from quantum human to quantum being? Well, did you feel like the momentum of the book had changed, or did you already write the book before that had happened, or?
Yeah, the book was already done.
Okay.
The book was already done, and it was interesting because I wanted to make a point that how the quantum, which is basically an incremental amount, right? That's pretty much what quanta is, a very small, tiny amount of light or energy, whatever it is. Quanta is a Greek word, right? It just basically expresses that incremental amount. It's that gold dust that I'm talking about, right? That opens the door for new trajectory. So that to me was very important, that we start accepting the fact that who we truly are at the subatomic level. I mean, the very fact that we found this discovery more than 150 years ago or something, and we are not even teaching that in a school, which is the main reason we are in this limited Earth place. Because I believe if everybody starts recognizing the magnificence and the resonance that we carry with every action that we do in our daily life, then we can all show up that best way, and then we can change, because Earth and us, it's just we are mirroring each other. And I want to say this because it's very important, and even though it looks like a little bit off the wall, but everything is connected, right? So let's say that when you are dealing with your health issue, your microbiome, which is your foundation, by the way, that actually, if you can make your microbiome healthy, you can make the Earth healthy, because everything is mirroring each other. And I'll give you this example, and this is really interesting, by the way. So International Space Station, when the Russian astronauts were visiting, they actually found that their microbiome, by the way, had the similar signature as the exterior structure of the International Space Station had. Like, they were mirroring each other already. And they actually found that, and they were willing to tell that to the public, and they were being told not to. And I found about it through some other means. And it just basically reassured my understanding of how as above, so below is being mirrored in every aspect of our existence.
I think in chapter 11 of your book, you speak about a paper that was declassified where they talk about something similar to this. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, it's called the Gateway Experience. And when you type it on a Google, you can find the 30-page paper. And I love that paper because I pretty much like gobbled it out, because I love those type of things. So if you ever ask me what my passion is to connect the dot, because I love it. I love researching. I love connecting the dot. I love understanding every aspect of our existence. So that way we can see the simplicity and the beauty of everything. So the Gateway Experience basically proves it, that how imagination does affect our manifestation. And the way they do that is basically they explain that how our brain has all these, hippocampus and thalamus, and the way it it's almost like what happens is that we have a right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, and our right hemisphere is what kind of does a good job with visualization, and our left hemisphere, which kind of does all the binary processing, kind of what it does, it breaks it down for us. So what happens is that when you see a vision that you would, and we are doing it all the time, by the way, whether we do it consciously or not, right? So when you see a vision of any sort, like if you want to eat an apple and you think of an apple, right? You see a vision of an apple, then what happens is that it actually opens the door for you to bring the apple in your reality. And there are exercises like that, because there are so many people who are writing books and sharing it to the world by saying that, okay, do this, and yeah, because it works, because that's how we are designed. Like, it's interesting because, like, if for me, because I already see the connection, so I notice a lot of these information coming through. So that is the thing that, but you can take it to a further level. So what they did was that they were basically explaining that how we are a hologram, and the way we process information is holographic. So what happens is, when we see an image in our brain that we think about, what happens is that because we have this inner built-in holographic features, our microtubules, which is kind of, according to Penrose and Dr. Stuart Hameroff, according to the two of them, they have been studying the consciousness for 30 years in Europe and Oxford. They basically say that microtubule is kind of where that trigger happens, that light happens, that light that actually ends up converting the 2D hologram into 3D for us in our real life. So we become the conduit, like we become the creator of what we want to create. And the fact that they actually wrote that paper in 1980, some time, and then they declassified the paper in 2017 or something, and I stumbled on it in 2020 or 2021. It was right around the time when I was doing my book, so that was last year. Wow, yeah. So the point of the story is that information has been available to people who have been, running the show for Planet Earth, and there are many informations like that has been available to these people, which is the reason they have been able to kind of control us, because they already know how we work. Like when you watch a television, and if you watch a monster in the television, then what you're doing is you're almost bringing that monster into real life if you keep on watching that. So television is a pretty good way for them to say, keep watching it, because you can make that real, and we will keep you in this loop of Hunger Game.
Yeah.
So that paper to me is a great paper, and I would love to, because I have a lot of information on it, technical information. I'm just giving you a very small tip of the iceberg. But if you really want to unpack that, we can definitely do that, because I actually teach a class on that paper where I explain how step by step your imagination creates your experiences. And that to me is the key for manifestation.
Yeah. Can you break that down for me in the audience? Like I'm a huge fan. Like, first off, maybe we could take a step back. Why do you think that was classified for so long?
Oh, for a very good reason, because just imagine. The word imagine already has a magic in it, right?
Imagine, yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is that if everybody knows that they are that powerful, I mean, nobody's going to listen to Pope or God or any intermediate people that's on earth. I mean, nobody will do that, right? Because if I tell you that, you can pretty much, I can teach you how to fish, and you can take as many fish, and you can be well fed for the rest of your life. You're not going to work for anybody if you can get your own fish and feed yourself, because you're like, well, I'm just going to have my own life now. I'm going to have so much fun. They didn't want to take that control away, because, it's easy to control people by keeping them ignorant. I mean, I actually learned that in the 1800s and even before that, right, people used to kill people if they would find books in their houses, because they knew that if you have any knowledge other than where you are, then that's going to give you the keys to the kingdom. And that will make you very powerful. And that won't work for somebody who has a whole different agenda, because the kingdom of spirit is embodied in our flesh. That's the Kabbalistic principle. Based on that principle, you are the walking and talking God yourself, because God is expressed through you. So, and this paper basically completely explains that how incredible our mind is, how incredible our light is, how we transform energy into matter. So yeah, and see if I can find a slide that I can share. So just give me a little pause there, because I may be able to share it.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yes. Let's see. And if I share, yeah, I think I have a slide that I can be able to share. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present here and share the screen.
Okay.
And let's see. So, okay, entire screen. Okay, so I set entire screen, and now what do I need to do to share? So I selected it, and why is it not letting me just go further? Let's go. That's so weird. Choose what to share. So I said that,
Okay.
and when I share it, how come it's not showing me the share button?
Maybe the present down at the bottom down there? No?
It's weird because I'm able to actually pick up the screen and everything, but then when I pick it up, it doesn't give me like a button to say share. And I'm trying to understand why is it not doing that? It should. So I wonder if I can show you. Okay, how about this?
Yeah,
You try to share something because you'll know if there has to be a button there because
Okay.
it's not showing me. I say entire screen and then
Oh,
okay, it says got it. Yeah, why is it okay? Are you able to see anything?
I can't. Oh, yes. Hang on. There we go. Now it came up.
Oh, it does
right.
come up?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so it's actually sharing the screen that I'm on, which is fine. Are you able to see a slideshow?
I am, yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so let's see if I can do this. I need to do display setting.
Yeah, the limbic system. Epic.
Swap presenter view and slideshow. Okay, now you can see it right in a slideshow format.
Yep, can.
Okay, so this is just this is actually part of my book. So quantum being is a conduit to a holographic universe. So the way it works is, so we have right hemisphere, which is non-linear. Left hemisphere is linear and logical. So the right hemisphere is where the receptor receives and feels the desired result with emotion. So the thing is that that's why, in order for us to bring anything to life, we have to embody it, right? That's why, like, you think about it through your left hemisphere, but you visualize it. That visualization actually comes with the imagination plus projection. And that's where your right and left is being synchronized because you're visualizing it from your right hemisphere. But there is that synchronization that occurs that is where rubber meets the road. And that's, and you can see our hippocampus, right? It visualizes the desired result. And then we have this thing going on. So our logical mind is doing the computation like a binary computing system. And that's where like a matter resides because it's a potential energy. It's the energy that basically has all the potential, but it hasn't been manifested yet. And when the right hemisphere, basically, which is where your feeling comes in, which is where all the other multidimensional aspect and nonlinear aspect comes in, when it merges with the right and left together, what happens is that that's where the, like it's almost like a firework happens. And it gives birth to new possibilities. Like, so basically it's saying that we are comparing all this data, and of course the memory comes in, and this is way more complex than this, but this picture just gives you a little tiny bit of idea of how holographic universe interplays the role in making something real for you. Like thought becomes things through this methodology.
You know, I'm reminded of Ian McGilchrist's work where he talks about the master and his emissary. It's a fascinating read, and he talks about the left hemisphere being this analytical scalpel with which we take the world around us and cut it up into bits. And then the right hemisphere we use as this way in which we see the overall picture. And I can't help but when I'm looking at this, the model of the hologram that you're putting forth here, it seems like that's projected onto the world right now. It seems to me to be the reason why people in positions of authority are constantly trying to divide us because they don't want the two hemispheres to be together because that's when the magic happens right there. Does that seem plausible to you?
Yeah. I mean, it very much. And because, I mean, think about it, right? I mean, there's like all these great slides because this is
Yeah.
my work. This gives you a nutshell of what the Quantum Being book is all about. So why is
Yeah. Let's
doing
go through
that?
them. Let's check them out.
Swap.
That's a beautiful picture, by the way.
Yeah, that's the cover page, right, of the book, and even the cover page was very interesting of the book because I picked up the cover page, and then I noticed somebody else used it. I think it was Deepak Chopra used the cover page that I was planning on using it, and I said I'm not going to use that because he's way more famous than I am. So I figured out this one, and thankfully nobody used it, so it worked out. But if you really look at this is pretty much the ultimate. This is the holy grail of my message, okay, as a quantum being, that we are, I'm an engineer, right? So I'm putting it in a very simple way that we have inputs, we have outputs, and we have all these drivers that are working as an operating system and creating this season finale for us in every action we take. So when we start understanding this dance that we do and create and play in, then we can become more what do you say the word, like more of the quantum being, like more of a bird flying in the sky, right? Because that is the idea. Like we're not trying to control, or we're not wanting to be controlled, but we have to be in resonance.
Mm.
And you see, our output is pretty much our experiences, the reality that we create moment to moment, the projection that we see, the way, I mean, if you really look at it from a very, very engineering mindset, then it's a waveform it's all waveform. Everything is a waveform. So yeah, this gives you a little preview. And as I said, that I have this picture I don't have in my book. I have this picture in my book because I kind of keep on doing evolutionary work because it's so exciting to me. And what I want to do is I want to share all this knowledge in a format where we can actually perform experiments, right? Where people can show up and do these things like, like Joe Dispenza is doing it, right? So, but I have my own style. I've never been to him, but I have heard people say that what I do versus what he does is very similar. It's just I come from a very different place than he does. So,
What, as an engineer, do you find it odd that for so long we've used these mechanistic metaphors to describe the natural world?
you're saying, do I find it odd?
Yeah, don't you think it's odd that we have decided to use all the machinery of life, and it seems to me that we use a lot of mechanistic metaphors to explain the human idea of life. Like that just seems odd to me. Like why are we talking about machines when we're not machines? And doesn't that kind of give us the wrong direction to go down?
Well, the problem is we've been distracted, right? And the problem is we are like, it's almost like, like a Wizard of the Oz, right?
Yeah.
Dorothy, right? It was Dorothy, right? So the
Yep.
whole thing is that it's almost like, because, when you have been bought into a narrative that's just so different than what you truly are, then when people say that, no, you have the power, you have the red shoes you're wearing, you can go home, you're like, no, that's impossible. How can I go home, right? So the point is that we have been kind of living in an illusory world for a very, very long time. And not only that, it's getting more and more exciting because because that has its own life now, right? And the whole artificial intelligence being in the play. And my whole thing is that because we have come so far away from our human gifts, that we have kind of gotten a little bit lost and distracted. If we really understand that how powerful we are, that we can make something that is pure illusion feel real. I mean, that's how powerful we are. So the reason we have been controlled is because we are so powerful. You see? So there is that dichotomy.
Yeah.
And when you start unfurling that dichotomy, that is the reason somebody had to spend so much energy and they had to create so much facade and so many things like television, AI, so many things just so that you can be distracted. That actually says that you are that powerful, that they have to be really scared of your power. So the thing is that if just imagine that let's say you and I get together, and then Perry gets together, and then Anya gets together, and then we keep on multiplying it. And we basically say we are going to hold truth to our human existence, right? As soon as we do that, and then we keep multiplying and keep making the sacred geometry, what happens is that it's going to be very hard for anybody to engage us. And I'll give you another example.
Yeah.
Okay, so Finding Nemo. Did you watch that movie?
Of course.
Okay, so remember when they get all trapped in that wired net, and then the Finding Nemo tells his dad that dad, we need to help them. What should we do? What should we do? And then the dad tells them, swim down, and so all of them swims down, right? What I want to do is, unless somebody else wants to take that role, I have no problem. I don't mind saying swim down, because when you put the laser focus on something that everybody listens to, because that's a sign of a good leader, is that you actually help free the people, right? So he basically, his words, swim down, was the key word and the key depiction of a leadership. And the thing is that all of those fishes, pretty much, they were already trapped. They didn't know what else to do. They listened to him because it was a better solution than anything else they could think of. And when they all swim down, they free themselves. And we can all do that.
It's fascinating to me to think that the way we free ourselves is to move together.
Oh, 100%. I mean, think about it. Like, because an ant can't do shit for the elephant,
That's right? That's right.
The ant has to be all together, and then they can take the elephant down. That is a great example for us to remember that ant doesn't even have a brain the size of a brain we have. And you already saw what I shared, that our brain is a quantum computer by itself, because it converts the binary data into three-dimensional data. That's the only reason we see what we see.
Do you think that's the foundation for like telepathy on some level? Like, you know, when you get next to somebody and you can, I know what they're thinking, or you can kind of, sometimes it feels as if people are communicating to you in a way that is beyond measure. Like, what's going on? Yeah.
So now we're going into string theory.
Okay. Is that okay? I don't know about that. So, but let's can we go into that?
Yeah, sure. We can go there. I mean, as I said, we can go anywhere. So the whole thing about that is that it's the fact is that every single thing in existence is vibrating to and fro in the form of string. String theory basically kind of says that everything has a motion and everything has a string, and everything, all these strings are vibrating at a different level in different dimensions. So when you are, and that's why the whole timeline and your focus plays a role. So like, if you think about it, like, you know, like when you ask me what is holographic universe, right? Now my mind is going to go into tap into whatever holographic universe is from my perspective. So what I'm doing is I'm putting my laser focus there on that word, but then it's collecting all the things that I have understood all my life that's available on the morphogenetic field, and I'm able to match my frequency and vibration to the point where I can access that information and comprehend it and express it to you so you can understand it.
That brings up questions about time, right? Like one of my favorite authors is Mircea Eliade, and he talks about like the sacred and the profane, and he talks about this one part that I really like that he speaks about is like sacred time. And sacred time is a time that both you and I and our mother and our father and our great grandmother and our kids can all be in at the same time. And it's like the time of ceremony or the time of a rite of passage. Even though we can't be there together, we kind of can, because we can all imagine ourselves in this position. And I was just curious to get your thoughts on time and sacred time versus profane time, about realizing the past, the present, and how maybe we're experiencing all of them simultaneously. What do you think?
Okay, so if I tell you what I think of time, it's going to blow you away.
Yes, please do. I love it.
Okay, so time pretty much is a tool to trace each other into material existence. That's it.
Okay. I have a vision of it. Okay.
Okay, and then I'll give you something else that's going to really mess you up. So I watched the movie Lucy. I like watching sci-fi movie because there's always, like if you want to watch the real news, watch sci-fi movie. That's my source of information. Anyway, so Lucy is a great movie, by the way. I loved it. But it was interesting in that movie, there's a scene, right? Because Lucy is like 100% performing at her optimum brilliance. And she basically plays this video she plays the video where like they show like a car in the video, and it just, the car is being passed, and then he says, play the video and speed it up, time infinite. So she gives that instruction. So the whole idea was, if you're watching a movie where something is moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you speed it up, there's going to be a segment in that movie where the car is not there at all. Right?
Right.
And that's when she explains that time is basically the reason that you experience the matter, which pretty much means that we are all in a time capsule from that perspective. So basically, we are just the figment of someone's imagination who's looking at the globe, the globe, the snow globe that people hold in their hands.
Mm-hmm.
And just think about a god who has a snow globe in their hand, and they're looking at this earth and all of us in there and saying, yeah, this is a good entertainment for me. I mean, there's just so many things about it. But what I'm trying to say is that we get so wrap around these concepts like time to the point where we lose ourselves. That's why I say that the only thing that is really real in this whole world is your feeling.
How about the moment? Is that the only thing that's real as well? Or the feeling in the moment?
Yeah, definitely. The feeling, of course, is just one word, right? The English is a one-dimensional language, right? So when we say something, you just have to remember that it has the essence to carry all of these other strings that picks up like a chain, because it's a multi-dimensional word. So yeah, 100%, everything that comes with that. But when you really start looking at the whole world from your gauge, which is your emotional feeling or your feeling, and how you process information, then I think that we are no longer going to be wasting our time with a lot of low-hanging fruits that are distractive.
In this moment, is it only you and I that exist?
I would say that as far as the real thing goes, yes. Because to me, the only thing real in the whole planet Earth is people. Everything else is a facade that we use or decide to show up to each other, right? And that's why I'm saying that why don't we, since we're going to be in a holodeck, creating a good facade, why don't we create a timeline? Why don't we start showing up in gatherings? It's going to be way more fun. I don't want to spend the rest of my life being on a Zoom doing podcasts. No.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good to do it because, of course, I want just to establish a relationship, but then we need to all start meeting with each other.
Yes.
Because our crystalline self, when we meet together, we really open the door for the piezoelectricity to create a whole new earth for ourselves and for others.
Well, maybe you could talk about the crystalline self. Like, what is that?
Because we are a vibrating crystal. So I actually explained that in my book a lot. And the whole thing is that we do have crystalline structure in our body. Our bones are crystalline. Our, we have a crystal in our pineal gland, right? We have a crystal in our teeth. We have crystal in all these different places. And the thing is that actually, it's funny because, there is this thing that we are transforming from carbon to crystalline base, right? Our DNA is evolving, and it's doing it at a multidimensional layer level, right? So physically, we're going to have to become lighter in terms of what we consume, right? However, spiritually, we are opening the door for other strands of DNA to actually be formed. And then that drives us to ascend. And to me, ascension pretty much means evolution, because we're continuously ascending to another level. We're continuously transforming to another level. And you get to decide whether you're going up in the Jacob's ladder or down in the Jacob's ladder, because you have all the choices.
It seems like that process is happening faster and faster. Maybe that's just because of the people with whom I'm speaking, but it seems like that process is happening in our world. Like, we're in a time of rapid transition, it feels like to me. Does it feel that way to you?
Yeah, it's because, we're processing information faster. So if you think about it, it's not the time that's moving faster. It's we are aware of what's happening to us is the key thing, because time is relative,
Yeah.
as Einstein already said that in his general theory of relativity.
Hmm.
So time is relative. So we already know that. So I think then it becomes like, yeah, that's why to me, when we don't give importance to the very thing that human is all about, and we give importance to everything that is around human, like it was all a tool to comprehend human consciousness, and we have given importance to the tool than ourselves. And that's why one of the person in our octopus movement says human centric, right, versus system centric. And yes, so that's the thing, that we have been distracted. And I think the more we become aware, but the thing is, the thing that really gets into a challenge for a lot of people, and it was a challenge for me too, is that when you become aware of all the distraction, by that time you've created so much mess that a lot of time when you really look around, it is like a sleeping beauty, right? So it's almost like you feel like, oh my god, like I'm trapped. What am I going to do? Like I recognize that this is not good. I'm in a trap. But I have been there in so many different conditions that I actually recognize the power which is there to kind of help you when needed. And you can call that God, you can call that
Right.
white light, you can call that source, you can call that primal creation. Basically, what I call that is the consciousness that is a group consciousness, because see, we all are one. And right now, at this level where we are on 3D, yeah, we have to process ourselves separately, because that's the only way we are going to, we are in a test, right? So when you are being tested, you're not going to be told that, no, there's nothing to worry. It's all one. You're all one. So there's nothing to worry, right? Because we are being tested. So we have to feel separate, because consciousness has separated itself into the form of you and me, so we can understand what God is.
Right. It speaks to this idea of, so when I take what you just said, coupled with the idea of the crystalline person, I've been speaking with a lot of people who have been using sound therapy, and it seems to me this concept of a crystalline person, it really helps to explain harmony and resonance and how this can go a long way in communication and healing.
Yeah, because sound was the first thing that happened before even the light happened, because sound, right? And because sound is a representation of the vibration, right? Which is how we actually hear things. So sound is a primal way, because, word can get lost sometime in translation, but sound
Yep.
doesn't. So if you think about it, sound is more of a raw information there. And if your heart, like when you hear a sound and you feel very much one with that, then that is more genuine, because there's nothing that can take you away from what you feel. You see my point? Because there are times we get lost, because we have so many things where we can get lost in. So it's almost like it's a good tether to kind of connect your soul to, and that way you can bypass some of the brainwashing.
Is that kind of what the test is to like you come in here and you're given this sort of brainwashing or this conditioning? Is the test to break the conditioning, you think?
Oh, 100%. Because, if you think about it, yeah. Because, I mean, it's almost like the fruit. The fruit is there, right? But you have to go through it, because, it's like, yeah, because, you are in a cage and you're given all the stuff. And then it's like every time when you do something, they give you something and then they say, okay, good. But then some other problem comes. But because it is like, I always tell my boys, because I talk about these things to my boys when we go hiking. And I use the word, the game where there's frogs popping out and then you keep on
whack-a-mole.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're here to do. We're playing that game here all the time. And the more you get good at, which I have gotten pretty good at, as you can see, my problems gets bigger too sometimes. But then the good thing is that's why I'm saying that it's time that people who are recognizing all of this, and we kind of have accepted the fact that, okay, we are here. We understand that this is the game. Let's work together so we can have so much fun in this game while we're still in this consciousness.
Yeah, I love it. As a rocket scientist and quantum being, how do you navigate the convergence of science fiction and reality in your role as an aerospace engineer?
Yeah, it's actually fun, because the good thing is that I understand how to hop timelines, right? So I have this one room where I'm doing this this exchange with you. I have another room where I do my NASA work, so I always keep the distance. And it's funny because my right room, which is my right hemisphere, is where I do these nonlinear conversation. My left room is where I do my NASA work because I have to be a little bit more linear there. But I think that when you do time dilation, right? These are all the things I want to teach, by the way, because I do it in my daily life. You become really good in deciding where to go, when to show up, what to do, how to do it. Because at the end of the day, everybody is in their own consciousness doing their own Hunger Game dance. Everybody is. And there's a give and take going on. There's this input coming, output going. So when you start looking at it as a dance and what you do and what you show up, you have to, the thing that I take responsibility for is I have to show up with my integrity, with my principle. Because every night when I sleep, I want to make sure that if I die, then I have done it all. So that to me is my principle. My core principle runs the show. And then I'm very selective about experiences that I'm choosing, why I'm choosing it, and what am I choosing it for. So I'm actually grateful that I actually became an engineer because it really gave a huge enhancement to my analytical brain. And because of that, I'm having this type of conversation with you. It's because of all the learning that I did and all the things I went through, I was able to see this dance between the two, because it's almost like darkness and light has to be together. Similarly, that's why to me, the nonlinear is not going to exist without the linear, and vice versa. So, because we process information through contrast, that's just the way we are. So, when you understand the dichotomy of a human quantum computing existence, then you know that you can use everything that you have up to your fingertips in a way that you can make the most exciting life. And I really feel like right now I have come close to creating this exciting life. Now I want to take it to another level, which is where I'm going to need other people, because I've been doing this life by myself, alone mostly, for a very long time. And now I'm looking to open the door for the right people to join me in this, where we can create like a band group and we can go world to world and teach people how to live in harmony. That's what I want to do.
I love it. I think the book is would you say that the book is an invitation for that?
Oh, 100%. Because I always say that my book is an extension of my business card.
Right.
And then I'm actually really working hard to create a work instruction, because I have been asked by various people that if you can create a workbook of that book, it would make it easy for people to ingest the information and make it part of their daily living. So that's my next goal. And then I want to basically spread that knowledge all over the world through everybody who agrees with this, so that so I can do my part, because I know everybody is doing their part, but this is my calling and my passion, and I find it very exciting to be given that as a gift, and then I want to give this gift to others, because I think it will make it so much more fun when you get up in the morning, and no matter how many things you have to do in your day, you actually say to yourself that, you know what, I'm going to do all these things because I'm excited to do it. And you create a life in a way that everything you do is exciting, because that's what Bashar says, right? That follow your excitement. And I think what happens is a lot of time people have created so many things in their life just to do food, clothing, and shelter game, that they have forgotten what excitement is. And then they're so far away from it and they think they can't have it. And I'm saying you can have your cake and you can eat it too.
I love that message. It's true. It's sometimes we've gotten so far away from the important things in life. And maybe that's what the UFO is. And sometimes I think that like people see the UFO or they see these projections of things, but they're really just seeing a part of themselves they haven't seen for so long. Like it seems alien to them. Like the concept of alien, maybe that's us encountering ourselves for the first time, right? Like, wow, this is us. What are your
majority of the time, actually, the majority of the time, because I have been in touch with people who directly communicate with UFO, by the way, and majority of the time, what I've heard is that these people are our future selves. But they are one of the one that I heard, I'm in connection with, it's in Brazil, and they basically claim that the people that they're communicating with, they are 50,000 years away from us. And again, the time, of course, we have to use time in this linear 3D world. But the whole point is that they have already been there, done that. They've seen already. They have so much technology that they can actually come in our consciousness and give us some, things to kind of help us move along, because they kind of do feel sorry for us, because it's the same. We are them and they are us. So there is that. So I mean, yeah, to me that makes a lot of sense. And actually, I always wonder, with all the intelligence I've gathered, that where is my future self, and why is she not showing up in her way that I can say, what have you invented so far? And maybe I'm not supposed to know, because the movie Terminator, remember? Because
Right.
if you know, then there will be something else trying to kill you. So maybe it's good to not know.
It's true. It's true. What
Right?
else can you tell it? Like the concept of meeting ourselves in the future, or UFOs, or interstellar planetary, transportation. Like, as a rocket scientist, what else can you spill the beans on, or what else? Maybe some interesting insights that you have that other people may not have about interstellar time, or aliens, or UFOs, or technology. Can you go down the road on some of those and explore some stuff with us?
Yeah, so one thing is that, like, a lot of people are always wondering, like, especially they wonder about the whole thing about, why are we going to the moon now? Did we really go to the moon before? And all of the questions, right? And I always say that it's interesting because, like, first of all, we all have to start taking responsibility for the fact that we are all one, right? So that just helps. I feel like right now, what I'm working on, Artemis program, it's all about living on a moon, dark side of the moon, for 1 week in the next 2 years, and then keep extending the stay so we can ultimately go to Mars, and then we colonize Mars. And it's all in the next 10 years. So it's a pretty big plan to live on a moon and live on a Mars in the next 10 years. So if you think about it, 10 years from now, I mean, that sounds really incredibly close. I mean, just think about it. If we start even living on the moon, just imagine that when you and I meet, we affect our timeline. When we start living on the moon, we're going to affect Earth in ways that we have not even imagined. So what I'm saying is that we need to really get home with this concept of who we truly are and how high potential we are in terms of our existence. And there's no limit to our consciousness to experience all these different things, going to the moon, going to the Mars, because we have already done that in other dimensions. Now we are proving ourselves in this physical dimension, because the physical dimension is where the Hunger Game happens, okay? Because this is where we feel pain. Because in all other dimension, you don't feel pain. Time doesn't matter, because you are just, everything is at the speed of light. Everything is quantum, actually. It's more instantaneous. It's actually even faster than the speed of light. So in physical dimension is where everything is dense, everything is slow, everything feels, everything hurts. But this is where you get excited too. So that is why we have created this dichotomy between us and them, us and the cosmos. And when you start recognizing the fact that all of us have this inner craft within us, which is kind of dying to go home. And dying to go home doesn't mean that you have to disappear from Earth. Dying to go home means be one with all of your existence, your human, physical existence, and your cosmic astral existence. That's already like you're part of your soul that's saying, thanks God, finally you're home. That is the union and the marriage that we need to start embodying. And then we are no longer going to give so much importance to an organization like NASA or all the three-letter organization, because we kind of created it with our consciousness, with our group consciousness, partly because of all the fear we have been carrying with us for thousands of years, because of all the atrocity that happened to human soul and human as a species. And they are all real. But at the end of the day, what I'm saying is that the reason we have been confined and tortured and traumatized and all of that is partly because we have this power within us that everybody wants it. And the interesting thing about all the other species is, and I've had experiences where people have come to me, like even when I was working on missile defense, people would come to me because I embody the energy of openness. I embody the energy of that, I'm not going to judge you. And you won't believe it. Every time when we launch a missile, something would happen where it is obvious that there is other being who are helping to either launch it or not launch it. So it's almost like launch is a very big thing that we do. Whenever we launch a rocket, you are truly making a statement to the whole cosmos, because it's no longer just Earth, right? When you're launching a rocket, you're affecting the cosmos. And that's why everybody who is in this party or who is very much tuned into everything happening to Earth, including our future self, they try their best to make sure that they direct it in a way so it aligns with with whatever timeline they're trying to create. And when we get into the timeline, the looking glass technology has already been there. And that technology is used and availed to project what type of future needs to be created so, everybody can exist. And sometimes it gets directed based on whoever is running the show, like, in terms of what the goal is and who needs to win and so forth. But what I'm saying is, like, when we understand the power we have, we understand how mortal we are, because technically, our consciousness will always be there, whether we are in this form or another form, then nobody can really hold you enslaved. And that requires you to really recognize the power that you have beyond the physical dimension.
It seems so intoxicating, the power. Maybe it's almost like the ring of Mordor, like Tolkien's ring. Like everybody wants the power so bad, and it stops us from becoming one. Do you ever, when you're looking into the future, like as a rocket scientist, when you're looking into space, do you ever find yourself looking back at mythology and being like, that's what they meant about that?
Oh, I understand why the power is so important, because especially the more you understand the power of human being, it becomes very exciting when you have like a whole bunch of people that is like you can control like a puppet, and they're willing to do anything for you. I mean, if you think about it, that's like, holy shit, like I don't have to do it, I'm going to make them do it.
Yeah.
And they already have a recipe, right? Like up to the dot, where they know exactly how you can start, how you can end, where you can pull the thread, and you have gotten it really well. So I can see, because it has its own excitement. It's almost like, you create a dollhouse, and then you have all these dolls and stuff, and then you're like deciding, like whatever you want to do with these. There is definitely a little bit of a excitement there, which is why they do that. But the thing is that it's more exciting when people are with you because they love you rather than they fear you.
Right.
And that to me is my strategy. I want only people, like I want to be a magnet to people who are going to love me, to walk with me, because that to me is way more intoxicating than having to control people like Hitler did. That's just the way I think of it, because to me because I understand the power of love is so much more beautiful. It just, and that is the thing that ultimately everybody has to get a taste of, that type of leadership and that type of community where it's all based on love, because love we have within us. The power we seek is the power within. That's what I always say. So when you bring it all home to yourself and when you exude that power, then all the people who truly know what that type of power feels, which you hone within yourself, then they would want to walk with you. And then when you still walk together, then you become even more powerful than all the other people that are being controlled like a puppet.
When I look back at history, and sometimes you see the unveiling and the puppet masters are shown, like the French Revolution, and it's understandable. Like when people uncover the people pulling the strings, they get really mad. Like even me sometimes, like you start thinking about the people that have been in positions of authority for so long, and they have been pulling the strings. I don't think the puppet likes to know that his strings are being pulled. How do we stop the people from just wanting to murder all the people on the top? You know what I mean? Like
because just think about okay, so I always say that whatever you do, journey is intertwined with the destiny. So every action that you are taking to get somewhere is also who you need to keep on asking yourself, who am I becoming in the process?
Right.
So if you're going to do something where you're going to beat the hell out of somebody and then you can feel good, ultimately, I don't know, I cannot feel good, because I won't be able to even sleep at night, because now I'm worried about murdering somebody, because even though that person was bad, it's just going to affect my consciousness. So I truly don't want to get my hands dirty like that, right? My whole thing is, because I know ultimately that all the thing it's a duality, right? We live in a world where we have this dichotomy. So the thing that you see as negative is part of you that you haven't processed it properly. So when you start looking at everything as a mirror, then what you do is you don't dial into all the channels where you are going to get more angry about all the control that's happening in the world. You dial into a channel where you can do something about it.
Right.
In the most graceful way, with integrity, with honesty, without compromising your core principle, and able to sleep at night. So you have to make sure you account for all that, because you are a cohesive quantum being. You have to make sure that you take all of you wherever you go, all aspect of you, and you have to be able to live with all aspect of you. So when you start operating from that richer principle, then ultimately the dance becomes automatic, and then you actually start feeling good because you're going to find the home. You're going to find the home with people.
What about for people like when we take like the middle, like sometimes when we look at what happened with Israel and Hamas, like you see two people with just these incredible histories of family members being killed, and there's so much animosity there. Is there ever a way for people to, is just a part of the human condition, or is there a way for these people to realize that the only way out is to see yourself in the other? Or, you know what I mean? It just seems when we look at it sometimes through this lens of chaos, or this lens of shared tragedy, this lens of, oh my gosh, my family member, it seems to me that sometimes those wounds are so deep, and when it happens to you on a personal level, how does an outsider help influence that situation?
That is the thing, right? That you have to kind of know that where can you really make an impact that's
Yes.
going to ultimately open the door for them. Because I'm a Star Trekkie, right? So you don't go against the prime directive. I truly don't, because I'll tell you from my perspective. Okay, so I have a family, Muslim, right? I'm born raised Muslim. My mom basically says that when she watches a video of Palestinian, she can't even watch the video because it's so tragic. My mom said that I cry so much when I watch like few minutes. It really hurts, her. My brother always, every time when I talk to them, they're very sad about what's happening in Palestine. Most of my friends here in America, they all watch what's happening in Israel because they're favoring Israel. So they're very sad what's happening with Israel. So I get both sides of the story. And I always say to people, because people who are always watching TV and getting sad about all of these things happening, I say that, okay, if you're really, really sad about it, either get together with all the people who are also sad, and then you can create, like some sort of meditation or prayer, or broadcast the love message, or do something about it.
Right.
But don't just be sad about it, because then what you're doing is you're taking it all in. You are not channeling it properly, and then you're messing up your own life, so that you're not even helping them, but you're not helping yourself either. I mean, that's like a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
Right? So my whole strategy is that either you become part of the solution, definitely don't become part of the problem. And what I'm noticing, a lot of people are becoming part of the problem, and that to me, or just turn yourself off. And yeah, that's what I do, because for me, I wouldn't be able to write all these books and do all these things if I am dialing the channel that's just going to make me feel completely disintegrated, because I'm not helping anyone. And you know what? Supply versus demand. Okay, the more the human beings are going to watch these type of shows, that's happening. What happened with Ukraine? What happened with? And I know it sounds like, wow, I mean, she's saying it's a show. It's a show created to kind of take your power away, to kind of make you feel miserable and helpless, to kind of make you feel like you don't have a lot to live for. So technically, the more you're going to watch that type of stuff, the more you're going to tell them that, yes, keep bringing me these type of television show, because I am okay with that, because it's a supply versus demand. And that's what I'm saying, that we need to break the pattern. Like whenever I go from my work to home to work, I see all this fast food, and I don't ever eat fast food, but there are lots of people around me eating it. And I was thinking that if I want all of this fast food to disappear and be replaced by healthy food, like really, like when you go to the bar, you get this like nice kombucha or something, really like a shot with ginger and cinnamon, right?
Yeah.
If I want to create that reality, then first you have to stop feeding the very people who are not giving you help. But that requires, and that's why I'm talking to you, by the way, because I have been living alone pretty good, but now I recognize that in order to really have a great infrastructure, I want to affect it on a global way. Right? So what I'm saying is every one of us has to do their part. So if you don't want something, don't feed into it. Don't go to the fast food if you don't want it to stay. Don't watch the channel that just makes you feel miserable. If you want to do anything about anyone, keeps broadcasting the love signal, but always do something that empowers you. Don't, because you get to decide which channel to dial in. I mean, you are a hologram.
It reminds me of, in the earlier part of the conversation, you had mentioned that your mother would say, hey, why don't you look at this thing over here to make you sad so that you'll cry over there? It sounds to me like that's what these channels are. Hey, everybody, why don't you go look at these things that make you sad for a while? Think about how bad your life is. Why don't you just turn on the volume on your vibration so we don't have to deal with you? Exactly. That's what they're doing, right? That's totally what it is.
That's exactly what I say. I always say that the Quantum Being book offers you a new package for direct TV. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. But the point is, it offers you new channels to dial in.
Yeah.
And that's what I say, because, and that's exactly what I'm doing, is showing people that there are many channels you can dial in. And I actually have yesterday, because I'm continuously coming up with creative ideas, I have created a very good strategy that I'm going to teach in my workshop on how you can open the door for new channels to dial in.
How are you going to do that? Can you share a little bit with us here?
Yeah, it's like basically, I mean, like Bashar says, follow your excitement, but you go a little bit further. Like you go into the steps where you actually ask yourself a question. All the people you want to be with. Let's say there are people that you like to spend part of your life with, right? Like in my case, I have my boys, right? Yeah. So they are important to me. So people that are really important to you and you want to spend time with them, you basically make the list of all the people. And then you make a list of all the things you like to do with them that really excites you, like at the core level. And find out what those things are. And then what you do is you do that, and there are people in your life that you don't find anything exciting to do with. That's a pretty telltale sign to do something about it. Either change it, doesn't have to get rid of the people. But if you can't, then that's what I'm saying, that at the end of the day, if you're not going to be excited about living on this planet Earth, then you're going to make everybody else miserable too.
That's such great advice. Are you okay on time? I have another question or two if you're okay.
Sure.
Okay. In the realm of mental transformation, you mentioned remapping genetic encoding to activate and awaken DNA and RNA. Can you share more about the practical steps involved in achieving this transformation?
Yeah. So basically, what you're, because you are a programmable machine,
right?
You're an impressionable machine. Pretty obvious, right? Your DNA can store memory. It can actually store the data of the entire universe in terabyte. It's been already proven. They've already performed the experiment on 1 gram of DNA. So knowing that, these are the facts. Knowing that you are so incredible, walking quantum computer, and you're a hologram, and you're everything that you're seeking outside of you. That's why I always say that I work on a rocket, but we are way more magnificent than any rocket I've worked on. The point of the story is that you're telling yourself every nanosecond, by making a binary choice on what you say yes and what you say no to, that who you are and what you want to be. Because of this power that you already have within you, you really have to be careful on what you say yes and what you say no to. And when you start doing that, I would say everybody who's listening here right now, starting tomorrow, start with 1 hour. Just for that 1 hour, give yourself a 1 hour in a day where you're going to be extremely conscious, because what you're doing is you're programming yourself at the subconscious level who you are going to be and whom you want to be. So that is why you're programming your DNA with every action you take, including not just, so let's talk about spiritually. If you're looking at yourself as an observer and seeing how you are, parked in a space and time on planet Earth, surrounded by a whole bunch of other planets and so forth. So, but when you look at it from an observer standpoint, you recognize that how you versus everything else is kind of a figment of your imagination, right? So when you look at it from that standpoint, then you're no longer going to be worried about what's people going to say, how are the people going to react? Because all of that
Right.
is completely meaningless, because at the end of the day, the only thing that you're going to have to take control over is your emotion, your feelings, right? So spiritually, when you connect that with emotional, and then mentally you recognize that how every time when you think about anything, it's like a remote control. Like you are basically picking up a lifetime channel from a lifetime television as soon as you think about anything. Like, you ask me a question, I put myself onto that channel and I give you the information based on that. That's how powerful you are. But at the end of the day, because you are that powerful, you have to be very much aware of that thought process, aware of what you're doing to yourself while you're living a life, right? And that is how, and when you come to the physical, my God, it becomes so important for you what you're consuming, not just in terms of physical food and nourishment, but also emotionally what you're consuming and how it's affecting your body. So that's why, like, what I'm saying is that if everybody starts really being conscious about all of their physical, emotional, mental, spiritual self, what's going to happen is it's going to really make them realize that how much they have been distracted,
Mhm.
because all the distractions that we have in our world, you can't do nothing about them if you can't honor something that's within you, because you were only responsible for yourself. You didn't come here to worry about the whole world. You came here to worry about yourself. But the thing is that the kingdom of the spirit is embodied in your flesh, so you are the universe. And when you take that power within you, what's going to happen is you're going to see the entire universe is going to unfurl like a lotus flower, and it will show the beauty that you explain about the wine, right? And you are going to be able to see that how beautiful it is, but it starts from you.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes,
Are you the oldest? Are you the youngest?
I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest. Does your family ever come and visit you? Like, I don't mean to step out of bounds, and I apologize if I am. I'm just curious, like, what is your relationship with them like? Do they come and see you now? Are they doing well, or what's your relationship with them
So
like?
we do have quite a dichotomy, right? Because I left the entire culture and everything 30 years ago, which is pretty long time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk to them about like the concepts, like I'm talking to
Yeah,
you, the fact that like my sister-in-law did read my book because she understands English, I felt very good about it. And she did say the book is amazing, but she didn't ask me a single question. So that makes me wonder that, like, I would love to see that if someone can get the message, right? Because right now their life is like so in trenches that they have a hard time understanding the quantum dance that I am talking
sure,
about, right?
sure.
And it's kind of one of those things like you mentioned earlier, where people who have decided that they are not going to come out of trenches, because at the end of the day, it's a group consciousness thing going on.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
relation with them, in spite of the fact that I don't live like them, I don't think like them, I don't pray like them, I pretty much have a very unique life. My family really is proud of me.
I guarantee it. I think a lot of people are. I think, yeah, it's an
Yeah,
amazing story.
thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that to me is pretty amazing that my family has stand by me and they still invite me to their house and they would love for me to come and visit them. And I so I have kept a connection with them. And I'm always, whenever I talk to them, I give them an advice that can help them to have a better future because I care for them.
Yeah, it's in, it's interesting the way in which our relationship with our family changes over our life. And in some ways when I look back at my dad or my grandpa, I see like different versions of myself. And when I allow myself to look from that perspective, I'm like, hey, this is the older version of me over here. My dad gets all crazy. "Oh, I'm not the older version of you, but like, I think it's interesting to start looking at time and the people in our lives, like different versions of us. It's been very helpful to me to help, get through different sort of generational trauma or understand why I do things on that angle. I'm wondering, do you look at it like that too sometimes?
Oh, 100%. Because think about it. And that's a classic example of how we tap into a morphogenetic field. So, like, when people say that when I'm with my mom, I turn into a child, like I turn into my
Yes.
5-year-old
Yes.
self, it's truly because you are tapping into that consciousness. Because, that's what I'm saying. We're a hologram, right? So we
Yeah.
change ourselves based on the people that shows up. That's why when we say you bring the good out in me or you bring the bad out in me, it's truly the fact. Because,
Yeah.
you have all these different channels to dial. But if some people, whatever your relationship was, you kind of continue that thread. That's why when you meet someone and like if you like them and you meet them after 1 year, you'll know exactly where you left your conversation with,
Yeah.
because you have that in the morphogenetic field. It's kind of like you pick up where you left off, because we are that quantum computer. That's what I'm trying to tell you, that's the fact. And when people can see, and it's good that you use the word different versions, because yes, we have infinite versions of ourselves. And what I'm saying is that when you get to decide
Mhm.
what excites you and where do you want to show up with excitement and which people brings that best out in you, where it's so much fun that you want to be with them, then that is what, if everybody starts doing, there won't be anybody having an affair, there won't be anybody in a wrong relationship. Because just imagine you do exactly what you really really want to do, and the more honest you are with yourself, the more honest you are with others, and it multiplies like a 100 monkey effect, and the whole world, the whole earth is going to be so incredibly light and full of light. And see, light has two words, right? Light, when you think of it as like a
Mhm.
light, but it's the same. It's the
Yeah, it
same.
is. Yeah, I love it. I love the idea of different dimensions. And I'll never forget this one time in my life where I was a UPS driver for like 26 years. And this one time I was at work and the like so some cops had come to my door and I wasn't home and my mom and my wife were here and they were banging on the door and they obviously scared my mom and my wife. And so my wife calls me like, George, is there something you want to tell me? And I'm like, what do you mean? I don't think so. I love you. And she's like, well, there's a bunch of cops at the door. They just left. They wanted to come in here. They said they had to talk to you, that you're in trouble. And I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about. And as we're talking on the phone about this, like all of a sudden my call waiting starts blowing up. And I'm like, oh, I think it's them. They're calling me right now. I'm like, all right, I'll call you right back. So I tell my wife, I hang up with her and I answer the phone and they're like, Mr. Monty, this is Agent Bob Ross. We need to talk to you immediately. And I'm like, I'm trying to like rack my brain thinking like, what did I do anything? I didn't do anything wrong. I have nothing to be afraid of. And the guy's like, yeah, I got to talk to you now. How about I come to your work? And I'm like, that's a horrible idea. You should never come to my work. But why don't you meet me out on the road over here? So he meets me on the road and I'm racking my brain trying to figure out like if I did anything and I can't think of anything. So him and his partner show up and they show me these files and they're like, we would like you to look at these pictures and see if you know anybody here. So I'm looking through these files and I don't recognize a single picture. And as I'm looking at the files, I'm very cognizant of the people looking at me while I'm looking at these files, and I'm like, oh, these guys are just checking me out. I look at these files. My whole mind's getting blown. And I hand the files back to him, and I'm like, I don't know any of these people, and I'm not sure why you guys have me here or what you want to talk about, but what do you got on me? I mean, why are we here? And they're like, well, why don't you tell me how this guy in the picture has your license? And I'm like, oh, I got pickpocketed at the mall like 3 months ago. And I just saw all the air kind of come out of them. And they're like, oh, okay, fine. And they go away. That's the first part of it. The second part of the story is I came home, I talked to my wife, and she's like, what was it? I'm like, it was a misunderstanding. But I'll never forget that night. I had the craziest experience because I let myself think about, what if I was that guy? What if I was this mastermind criminal they were thinking of? First off, I don't know who they thought I was, but you know what? If I had the FBI coming and looking for me, I would probably be this mastermind criminal who is going between different countries and committing these crimes that were not crimes of destruction, but crimes of passion. I was doing these things that were helping the world be better. And so I just allowed myself to run with this new persona. And I did it for like an hour and a half. And I kind of became that other person. Like I became this international man of mystery. And I thought, why not? I could be that guy the same way as I'm this guy now. And like that was a transformative experience for me. And I felt like I was crossing dimensions. And from that point forward, I've been able to cross over and see myself in the perspective, not only of other people, but have a quiet time for an hour where you can actually go down the road and be another person. And it's a very transformative thing to cross those dimensions. And sometimes I think back, maybe I did cross this dimension and I became George the podcaster now instead of George the truck driver. And I'm wondering, do you ever look at your life like maybe there's still a Shehnaz that never left Karachi? Like maybe there's different dimensions like that.
Oh, 100%, because there are many yous, right? And there are many yous. And that is very true, that there is a Shehnaz that actually followed the script that was written to her. And she is probably, living that life. And I don't know how she's doing, because the Shehnaz that I know, she's not going to be happy in that type of life, because I was never somebody who could be confined. So I probably have created something there regardless. Even if I wouldn't be a rocket scientist, I probably am a rock star in Karachi, and I have this big woman gathering going on, and I'm probably making a difference in my own way. So at the end of the day, wherever you are, what they say, what is that slogan? Wherever you go, there you are. Right? Because your light is with you. But it's interesting what you were sharing earlier, because, I say that we process our subconscious through other people. Okay. So when people come in your life, especially somebody like that, where you actually almost personify that person, means that it was a huge statement to you to see yourself through them. So that's just the way we process, because, we process information through people, through places, through experiences, because everything is a consciousness. Everything is your consciousness coming back to you. So that's why it becomes important when you start seeing the world from that standpoint. It will be easier to love other people when you start seeing even people who are ugly to you, because they are a part of your consciousness that wants to teach you something, that wants to show you something that you haven't done. It's almost like there's a lot of role playing going on, because you are supposed to experience all those triggers so you can comprehend yourself.
It's amazing to think about that perspective. Like everybody you see is a different version of you acting out their own role. Like it's pretty beautiful to think about that. And in some ways you get to experience everything.
Oh, that's exactly what it is. But if you think about it, that's how I actually live. And because of that, and even though I'm still a human being, I'm not like, complete AI or something, right? I mean, I'm still an organic consciousness, and I still feel when something happens, it hurts like hell, right? So I feel all of that. But the good thing is that then I come home. Like I always, go through that. And then I come home and I say, okay, what is the reason? Like even when I had shingle in the year 2019, where my air completely turned into black, it was a horrible experience. I was rejected by 3 different emergency places, the 2 places. And then the third one, when I walked in with a friend, I basically just did this to them. I showed them my right ear because it was completely black, right? And as soon as they saw it, they're like, oh my God, we need to get you in right away. And they got me in and they did the CT scan. And then they realized if they wouldn't have gotten me in, I would have died, because because my infection was about to go into my brain.
Wow.
So, but the whole reason I'm sharing that story, what was the reason? Tell me, please remind me.
The reason was because we get to experience stuff, but we get to come home.
Exactly. So when that happened and I couldn't walk, I couldn't drive, I was pretty much bedridden for 2 months. I couldn't go to work. It was like one of the most challenging things for me to go through in 2019. And the thing was that after I went through 6 months of ordeal and everything, and I was sitting in my living room and trying to understand that why did I create that for me? It was very painful. It was horrible. I prayed many times that just kill me and get over and done with it. Because it was too much painful, damn it. And I am not interested in living with a chronic pain. Plus, I don't want to have a prescription pill that I want to take on for the rest of my life. So I had all these things. So I'm like talking to my conscience and I'm like, what the hell, man? This is just too much. And then it dawned on me exactly why I created that for myself. Like it was almost like a light bulb moment. And when I realized it and recognized it, it was almost like an instantaneous healing occurred. And I was able to get myself off all the medication. I was able to, I had to train my brain to compensate for the missing information coming from my right side of inner eardrum because of the damage. But I trained myself and I did everything. And the interesting thing is that I actually became more powerful than I was before.
Do you feel like part of you died and then like a new part was born and that was more powerful part?
Yes, 100%. 100%. Because what I experienced in the hospital, because, not only that I was hospitalized, I was treated like a contagion. So they completely kept me away from other people. Nobody can come and see me unless they would wear a mask and gloves because they didn't know what I was dealing with. So they were treating me like that. And I'm completely alone. And there were times when you're in a hospital, and I'm very sensitive to energies. It was very scary being alone in the hospital. And at night, there were times I was so scared because I would see the dark entities coming towards me, and I would get into the comforter and I would be like, please protect me. I would say all the Arabic prayers I've ever known, and then I would use all my spiritual gifts that I've ever understood to create a big giant protection around me. And then I had one friend who's like my mom, a spiritual mom, and she basically told me I can call her whenever I feel extremely scared. So I would call her and then she would pray with me. So the point is that I went through an experience that was very scary, but then I found myself.
You spoke of your spiritual mom. How have there been mentors in your life? Like, is that like a practice that you have? And what do you think about having mentors or being a mentor for somebody?
I used to always wish that I can have a mentor, but for me, I think that I have learned that maybe this is what I came on earth with, is that every time, like I've not ran into anybody who was able to help me get out of my current situation. Because the fact that when I'm talking to someone in the current reality, the only reason they're showing up there is because of my frequency and vibration, right? And if I'm asking for something that is something that I haven't experienced yet, but I want to, they don't really have a clue. So I had to do that for myself. But I did like people like Gandhi, for example, because I felt that I can see myself in him, because he was the right person at the wrong time in so many ways, right? I mean, he was a brilliant man with a brilliant message, but he wasn't really appreciated at the time. I'm hoping I'm not Gandhi, because I want people to really accept me right now so I can enjoy it. I don't want to die and then people can say, oh, she was a good girl. I like people to say while I'm still alive. So that's the one thing I would like to change. But I like people like Gandhi. I like people who are willing to stand up for the truth, even though they look very different than other people.
I think you embody his message of be the change that you want to see in the world. Like, I think you're doing that phenomenally. And like, it's really awesome. And Shehnaz, this conversation out of the park, like I really, really enjoy it. And I'm really thankful to get to meet you and talk about the book. And I'm hoping that this is the first of multiple conversations, because I think that even though we've covered so much, I think that there's still so much there. But before I let you go, can you hold up the book again? And would you please be so kind as to tell people where they can find you and where they can get the book and what you have coming up and what you're excited about?
Yeah. So basically, if you type my name, by the way, I show up pretty much everywhere. I'm on. So basically, my website is shehnazsoni.com. So it's easy. My name is right there. And LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook is where I kind of am active. My new goal is to pretty much be part of the new community that I'm attracting with my magnetism. And then we can all create something that's going to help everybody else. My goal for the next year is to put the quantum being principle that I already captured in a book in the back of the exercise, and even magnify it and make it even more easy for people to do it on a daily life. So I'm working on my workbook, and I'm working with people who are going to join me in my endeavor. Anya is one of them. Maybe Jeffrey, you're going to be another one. Perry's on board. And we're going to all come together and create something that's going to open the door for people to raise their consciousness in a more practical way. And I'm really looking forward for opportunities to share everything that I shared with you in more organic way. So that is one of my goals, is that I would like to be part of the retreat in a sacred place. That's one of my dreams. And we share all the goodness. And then we also practically do some of the exercises so we can activate our crystalline piezoelectricity while we're together. And also we open a whole new portal on Earth. That's my goal.
I love it. I can't wait to be part of it. I can't wait to share the experience. It's going to be amazing. And I'm excited for the future.
Yes. And the thing is, the time does not exist. So basically it has already happened. We just have to merge our consciousness with it so we can really say, Hallelujah. Basically, we're continuously proving ourselves that we are more amazing than we thought yesterday we were.
I love that. I love it. Well, hang on briefly. I'm going to speak to you shortly afterwards. But
Sure.
to everybody that's watching and listening today, please go down, check out the book, be prepared for the work that's going to come after. Do yourself a favor and reach out to Shehnaz. Go to her website, check her out on LinkedIn. The links will be down below. Thanks for all your work, and anybody who's interested, reach out. She's an amazing person and she's got a lot to share. And I think that we're looking forward to all of us living in a better world if we can become our most authentic selves. That's all we got for today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a beautiful day. Aloha.
Thank you.